Hola, Bogota. Buenos dias. I am from Florida, so I'm almost from Latin America. It's close. I'm going to talk about Fintech as a revolution of Fintech. So before I start, by a show of hands, raise a hand. How many of you are from the government or a regulator? It's okay, you can raise your hands. Anyone? All right. Bankers. Work for a bank. Lo siento. Okay. Tech companies, startups. Yay, look at you. Good. All right, my people. So, I have 4 kids, 3 daughters and a son. That's my youngest daughter, Alex. The boy hanging all over her is her boyfriend, Steven. Steven was born and raised in Colombia. He translated this presentation for me. If at any time I'm called an old fat guy, you tell me, I'll kill him. So my first job was in the Navy. I was on submarines. I spent about 10 years doing that. And there was a class of submarines built in the 60s that were named after freedom fighters. So submarines with names like George Washington, Ben Franklin, Lafayette. And I was on a submarine called the Simon Bolivar. I went to American schools, so I had no clue who Simon Bolivar was, because we have horrible education. But I learned a lot about Simon Bolivar while on this boat. And he became a hero of mine. I love history, a military guy. His whole life reads like a great movie. So I thought, I'm coming to Bogota. Perfect time to jump in and say, all right, what did Simon Bolivar do to lead a revolution? In not one country, but 6. And let's look at the top 10 lessons from Bolivar's life and apply them to Fintech. Let's apply them to financial services. Let's say, how can we start a revolution? So in 30 minutes, we're going to cram in 10 of these. So here we go. Numero uno, number 1, you must think global. You must think global. Simon Bolivar is a son of Latin America, born in Venezuela, but he always thought global. He lived during an age of empires. Think about this. England, France, Spain, Portugal had more or less conquered the New World. You had England and France in North America. You had the Portuguese and Spanish in South America. And this was the day and age that Bolivar grew up in. He had the chance to go to Spain. He fought in wars there. He trained. He watched firsthand and was witness to the American Revolution. So this massive world empire losing to a small number of colonies. He watched the French Revolution, so an internal revolution take place. So he was witness to this. He bore witness and saw that. Now, if there was ever an analogy that fits our world today because of technology, think about this. Large incumbents going through a revolution that they can't stop. That describes the media industry. That describes retail. That describes music. And if you think it doesn't describe financial services, you're foolish. The World Economic Forum produced a great report on blockchain. You'll hear Lisa later today talk about blockchain, distributed ledger technology. Here's what's interesting. In financial services, what we saw was a massive change about every 10 years. So starting with semiconductors in the 60s, we then have mainframes introduced about the 70s, then you get PCs in the 80s, networks start to become a thing in the 90s, the internet shows up and everything changes. And smart devices and mobile take off. But notice the change that happens around 2010. Everything, everything from a technology standpoint hits. And we get biometrics, cloud computing, blockchain, machine learning, quantum computing, robots, all topics you'll hear about later today. But all of these impacting financial services massively. And Fintech has become global. This revolution is not isolated to just America and Europe. It is everywhere. There are now what we call Fintech hubs, or capitals or centers, in Silicon Valley, New York, London, Paris, Luxembourg, Frankfurt, Tel Aviv, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Shenzhen. These cities are adopting technology and running with it. I found it interesting when this report was written about a year ago that the closest they came to Latin America was Mexico. I would argue Brazil should be on there. And I would hope to see in about 2 years when I come back, Bogota listed That would be good. You must think global because there are so many examples for you to take. You look at what's happening in China. Man, you should know China and what's happening there. With their messaging apps and red envelopes and the volume of payments they're moving, which is staggering as compared to what's happening in other parts of the world. You take a look at Africa with M-Pesa. So again, mobile technology, financial inclusion coming to the masses. So is there a revolution taking place globally because of fintech? Yes. Will it impact Latin America? It already is. It's already here. So number one, numero uno, think globally. Number two, you have to have mentors. And notice I put this number two. I didn't put this at the end. Mentors matter massively. For those of you that speak English, this is really funny, okay? It's dude, who's your tailor? That was for you, Lisa, okay? Bolivar had mentors. He was able to watch the Revolution in America with George Washington. He was able to watch Napoleon and what happened in France, and massive number of other mentors, both in Latin America and external. He was able to learn from their mistakes. He didn't just copy them. That's his own quote, his words, which is something like experience matters. Judgment comes from bad experience or something like that. I can't remember. It's a good quote. But he's right. The older you get, the more you learn. You mess up, you learn from it. That's a good thing. And to pass those lessons on. That's huge in financial services. This is Bill Gates, a young Bill Gates. This slide is really funny because when my daughter's boyfriend was translating the slides, he would read the Spanish translation I had out loud in English. And he said to himself, "White people are dinosaurs." And I kicked him out of the house. He's probably right. But that's Bill Gates. Bill Gates, about 20 years ago, in an interview in Quartz magazine where he said banks are dinosaurs, where he was confident Microsoft and other tech companies would kick banks to the curb. 20 years passed, and now this is Bill Gates, one of the smartest men alive, one of the richest men alive, who is now working to bring banking to the 2.5 billion unbanked individuals across the globe. And his intent is to bring them into the financial services space, into banking. It's amazing what 20 years of experience will do, even for one of the richest men and smartest men in the world. So what do I tell you to do? Look for mentors. Do events like this. There are plenty of different companies, different banks, tech companies you can work with. I highlighted the good one. You're welcome, Fredmin and Andreas. But there are plenty out there. You come to events like this, mingle with people you don't talk to day to day. Find mentors that have been in this space and partner up with them. Number three, I like rap music. I grew up in Detroit, so this is actually a rap song, Mo Money, Mo Problems. But I didn't know if he had rap down here. Bolivar grew up rich. He had the advantage. I grew up poor in Detroit, had to join the military. Bolivar grew up rich, automatically an officer. He grew up with money, understood the power that comes along with money. But then, once he became a revolutionist, he spent all his time raising money. Hard to have a revolution without money. And it ate up a lot of his life, especially when you're doing a revolution against the world empire in 6 countries. It gets to you. So the interesting thing about fintech is the volume of money coming into this globally. Great report by Citi. Fantastic report. Recommend you download it. It's for free. They constantly update it. From 2010, we went from $2 billion invested globally to over $20 billion last year. That's a lot of dinero. That's a lot of money, which draws attention. You think that's a good thing. It is. What's interesting, though, is that spread of wealth. This is in a 1-year period, 2015 to 2016. Notice who suddenly showed up. China. Look at the money invested in Asia right now. Remember I told you, number one, think globally? That's why. There is so much happening over there right now. So what about Latin America? This was just at South by Southwest 2 days ago. South by Southwest, a massive conference in the U.S. that everyone goes to. And this was a great panel that was going on, and they showed this. I had to include it. The number of deals signed in North America is ridiculous. We've got too much going on, 784 deals. The amount of money pouring into Asia is ridiculous, by the way. What I would like to see, Fedmin, Andreas, no pressure, Let's get South America up a couple. There's room. That is opportunity. That is opportunity, people, that you should take advantage of. This described fintech. This is Jerry Maguire. Hopefully you've seen the movie. Tom Cruise. The way fintech used to be was the fintech companies going to the VCs and saying, show me the money. Show me the money. Welcome to 2017. This is the VCs now. You show me the revenue, baby. Come on, okay? That's reality. I don't care how good your solution is. If you're not making money, you need to pivot a little bit. And my advice to you, everyone wants to be a unicorn. Congratulations. You want to have a valuation over $1 billion. Me too. Probably not going to happen. That's okay. You don't need to find the next unicorn. You do not. If you do, good for you. But there are plenty of other companies to invest in, VCs, bankers in the room, okay? Plenty of great solutions. Number 4, your customers matter. Oh my God, customers matter. Bolivar knew this. The only way he would lead revolutions if the people were on his side, if he could gain them. Eloquent speechwriter, elegant talker. He did a fantastic job of getting the people to get behind him. So for you startups, you fintech companies, that's the word you need to embrace and know. Scale. Scale. I don't know what that is. What's scale in Spanish? Scale? I could have done this whole talk in Spanish. All right. Scale matters, okay? You have to have customers. You have to have the ability to scale. That is massive, and banks need that. By the way, banks have scale. Banks have customers. If you are a fintech company, I sit on these dragon dens, these shark tanks, these contests constantly as a judge. Once we get past the tech, the very first question I ask is, what's your customer acquisition strategy? What's your customer acquisition cost? Same thing a VC is going to ask you. And if you tell me word of mouth or I'm going to go viral, I tell you this. In English, Lisa, this says, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, okay? You are not going to go viral, and word of mouth does not work, so stop it, okay? Another great reason to partner with a bank, by the way, is the volume of customers they have. Number 5. We talk about failing in tech all the time. We tend to glorify failing in tech a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of failing. Neither was Simon Bolivar. It's okay to fail, but do it early. If you're going to lose, lose early, and don't make it a habit, okay? Bolivar did. First revolution he tried to do was Venezuela. It didn't work. Came to Colombia. It worked. Went back to Venezuela. It worked. He learned from his mistakes, okay? But it's okay to fail. Just get it done early on. This is supposedly his last words. This guy achieved everything. He's on his deathbed, and he's bitching and moaning, which I understand, I get. But even with all the success he had, he understood failure. So failure happens. This is PayPal. How many think PayPal is successful? Raise your hands. Yeah, me too, okay? They're good. They started as a failure. 1999, PayPal listed as one of the #1 worst business ideas of the year. PayPal, true. They were doing payments on Palm Pilots. Anyone have a Palm Pilot on them? Seriously? Oh my God, I love Latin America. You have a Palm Pilot? Holy shit. Okay, that's cool. I'm done. All right. Anyways, payments built around Palm Pilots. That is Peter Thiel. That is Elon Musk, 2 of the founders of PayPal. Reid Hoffman at LinkedIn. You know, we can do this all day. Great, great innovators who failed right out the gate. PayPal, miserable idea. And they pivoted. Whatever that word is in Spanish, embrace it. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Be able to pivot. If you're not getting customers, if you're not generating revenue, I don't care how great that tech is, think about the business model. They did, and it worked. So how do you accept for failure? Costa Parrott. Costa used to work for Swift, moving payments all over the world. He now works for the Gates Foundation, bringing financial inclusion to those. If you're a banker, go buy that book. Now, please. The Castle in the Sandbox. He will tell you how to set up an environment within your banking ecosystem that will allow for play, that will allow for failures, for tech companies to come in, get access to data without taking your bank down, and being able to fail. and to learn and to improve. It becomes your test bed. That's imperative. You have to have a place to play safely. And it shouldn't take 5 years to get there, by the way. Number 6, risk is part of it. Again, any regulators in here? Just go with me through this part. This is Yiddish. Andreas, you're from New York. You know what chutzpah is, right? I don't know a nice Spanish way of saying what chutzpah is. Very bold, risk-taking. That described Bolivar. Everything he did didn't make sense, and yet he accomplished everything. The way he fought was not conventional, and it worked because he had chutzpah. The very word entrepreneur means bearer of risks. That's the French definition of that word, the origin of it. It's all about risk. Controlled risk, but risk. Without risk, you fail. I asked a startup founder named Mike Dudas. Mike's in New York. Mike used to work for Google. He worked for Venmo. If you're not familiar with Venmo, you should be. This guy's genius. He's now got a company called Button. Very, very smart. And I said, what's your one piece of advice to startups or banks? And he said, think narrow, think deep. Narrow and deep. Think single use case, if you can. Don't try to solve everything. Solve one problem and solve it really well for a whole bunch of people, and you will be successful. For a bank, that's almost impossible. And you're my clients, I understand. But because of just the breadth of products you have, it's very hard to do this. For a startup company, it should be much easier for this type of focus. And that's what you need. Think narrow, think deep. Speed is everything. In this day and age, speed is everything. Man, did Bolivar know that. He had a small army. There's no way he should have won. There is no way conventionally he should have beat Spain. Spain should have kicked his ass. And it didn't happen. He won over and over again because he took risk and he moved quick. His army was incredibly quick. That's part of the reason he won is he understood speed. You best understand speed because that's how we live now. 1967, moving 5 megabytes, that took 5 people in 2 hours in a truck. Now, not even in the blink of an eye. Think about that change. Not even a blink of an eye. That's amazing. That's in my lifetime. I'm that old. In my lifetime, we've moved that fast. What happens in another 10 years? Another 20? Why can we move that fast? Here's why. Moore's Law. Moore's Law, the whole concept that if I take capacity power, computing power, it doubles every 2 years and the cost goes down every 2 years. That's Moore's Law. That sounds boring. So I took Moore's Law and I applied it to a Volkswagen Beetle, my first car, 1971 Volkswagen Beetle. A great car, got a lawnmower for an engine. I love that car. If you apply Moore's Law to a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle, you get a car that will go 300,000 miles an hour. It will go forever on a tank of gas, and it will basically be free. That's the equivalent. That's what's happening in computing. That's what's happening with computers. Is that what's happening with banking? Be honest. Quit laughing. That's mean. There's bankers in here. Still, that's reality, okay? We need to catch up with that speed of change. I love this quote by a startup founder, which it's in Spanish, and I remember it says something about the time it takes to schedule a meeting with the bank, we can ship, we can deliver. Yep. Think about that. From the time it takes just to schedule a meeting, my clients are the biggest banks in the world. I understand this. I live this every day. If you're in a bank, you live this too. You know that's reality. Any large company. Use that speed to your advantage. Keep your head in the clouds. Prior to Bolivar, only Hannibal had achieved what he did. Took his troops and elephants through the Alps to attack the Romans. Brilliant. And for thousands of years, no one else tried it because it was crazy. Until Bolivar and going across the Andes Mountains. And he pulled it off. It's okay to be in the clouds. Anybody want to guess where I'm about to go? If that's your data center, lo siento. It's all y'all's data centers. That's reality. Welcome to the new age. Cloud computing, AWS. Amazon, who completely disrupted retail. Completely disrupted retail. By the way, has completely disrupted storage and data. Amazon Web Services. This is Gartner's quadrant. that they always have. Notice who's way up in the top right, where you want to be. Amazon is killing it. Killing it. Look at the stats. AWS, and trust me, banking is noticing. Capital One moving like crazy to the cloud on Amazon Web Services, to that platform. BBVA, Santander, DBS. You take your pick. Global banks looking at how can we move off of the old mainframe servers and into the cloud. That's not the future, that's now. If you're a startup company, you're like, of course I'm on AWS. Of course I am. Well, you have to consider, how do you integrate with the bank then? By the way, something I deal with constantly. That's your new world. It's not only the cloud, it's APIs. The bank as a vault, the concept of the bank as a vault, and being able to open up a massive marketplace to your customers through APIs. The Amazon model, Alibaba model. It's not anything new, but a great slide. 9. Not in my house. I play soccer like crazy. I played soccer like crazy until I got hurt. But home field advantage is everything, right? You come into my house, you are not going to win. So we started with think global. Boulevard knew you had to think local. He had a distinct advantage. If he replicated what Washington did in the US or what Napoleon did, it wouldn't work. He had home field advantage against the Spanish, and he took advantage of that. I found this slide by some company that's kind of good, by the way. Way to go, Fina Vista. There's a whole hell of a lot going on down here. Good for you. Home field advantage. You should be able to excel at this. Banks, you should be paying attention to this, to these companies, and looking to partner with them. Find the ones that are local if you can. I'm a firm believer in that, is in the local community. But one word of advice, one size does not fit all. Again, Bolivar knew that. What he did in Spain in the Peninsula War as he fought the French would not work in Latin America. So he had to modify, he had to pivot. Remember that word pivot? Must pivot. When it comes to banking, you have to do that. M-Pesa, that example I gave earlier, sounds great, and it is. Great fintech solution that has failed miserably in South Africa. Has failed in Nigeria, has failed in Romania because of the local government, regulatory environment, and users are different. The same with Uber. Oh my God, every slide talks about Uber, the Uberification of whatever. Such a buzzword. Uber got its ass kicked in China. Torn up. You have to understand the local environment. And that's an advantage that you have. Embrace it. Last but not least, be careful what you wish for. Startup companies, you so desperately want that deal with the bank? Yes, you do. Don't get me wrong. It's a good thing. But welcome to the pain that you're going to be involved with. Banks, the same way, in working with the fintech companies. You want that so desperately good, reality is a little bit different. It's hard to put the pieces together. Man, Bolivar found that out. It was much easier conquering the Spanish than it was to rule. Remember his dying words? Damn it, how do I get out of this chasm? How do I get out of this labyrinth? There's a great play going on in the U.S. right now called Hamilton. I love this play. And there's a part of it where George Washington is talking to the main character, Alexander Hamilton, who is played, by the way, by Lin-Manuel Miranda, a Latin American wonderful playwright. But he tells him, the winning part's easy, governing's hard. Regulators have a job for a reason. Don't ignore them. The reason you can go so dang fast in a car and go 100 miles an hour is because the car has brakes. Would you risk going 100 miles an hour in a car without the brakes? No. Regulators have an actual job. They're there for a purpose. You need to embrace them. I love this quote by Matt Oppenheimer, a startup founder in the U.S. His second hire in his company was compliance. The ones we like to make fun of. Second hire. I couldn't agree more. Fintech companies, it should be your second hire. Banks, one of the very first things you should work with educating the startup companies is here. Is on the compliance side. So how do you succeed? 3 things. There's 3 legs to the stool. You take one of them away, this whole thing falls apart. You want to have a fintech revolution here? All 3 of you need to be involved. The next time I come, Andreas, whole upper thing should be the regulators and bankers, okay? That's how this works. You can't have one without the other. Bonus, you got to have a cool name, okay? Got to have a cool name. I'm from the U.S. We get George Washington. That's not a cool name. I'm sorry if your name is George. That's boring. That is a kick-ass name. Come on. I'm joking a little bit, but the name kind of matters. I got to be honest, who gives a crap about the name you pick? You know you're good when you become a verb. That's when you won. When I tell you to go Google something, you're not going to hit me. You know what I mean. In the U.S., if I tell you to Venmo me, our youth know exactly what that means. The same with Uber. Become a verb. That's when you win. So 10 lessons from Simon Bolivar for you and Fintech and how to have a revolution. All of those. Couldn't agree more. You're going to hear this all throughout the day today. Throughout the day. Please come and find me. I'd love to chat. I'd love to talk. Thank you all so much for letting me come and speak with you.